Hello, and welcome to Season 6 of Beyond Teaching, a podcast from the Psych Sessions Network. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, one of Beyond Teaching's 3 co-hosts. My other 2 co-hosts are Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University and Adeyinka Ikinsular-Smith from the City College of New York. These 4 episodes of Season 6 were recorded from March of 2023 through July of 2023, and they are dropped for a special Leap Day release on February 29th, 2024. In some ways, this is a mini-season with 4 episodes to present. Episode 1 features 2 international doctoral students at the time of the recording, and this episode is amazing. It's where I learned about deficit-based cultures and strengths-based cultures. In episode 2, Yinka, Susan, and I discuss email etiquette, which appears to be an ongoing challenge for many folks in higher education. In episode 3, Susan and I get a chance to discuss leadership transitions in one's career, addressing the joys as well as the drawbacks. We closed the Leap Day mini-session release with episode 4, where Susan and I welcome special guest Sue France. We get a chance to discuss multiple recent transitions for Sue, as well as new challenges. It's all part of the knowledge and skills that psychology professionals need to know about. The stuff that we were not taught in graduate school. That is, beyond teaching. Welcome to Season 6.
Welcome to another, actually a very special edition of Beyond Teaching. I'm here with a colleague and 2 very special guests. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University.
And I'm Yinka Ikinsular-Smith from the City College of New York, New York City.
And then Yinka, do you want to help introduce our guests today?
Well, we have 2 wonderful people that I've known for 1 or 2 years, understatement. And I'm actually going to let both of them introduce themselves, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Elvine Andjembe. I'm a PhD student at the University at Albany in counseling psychology. And I also teach psychology at the City College of New York.
Hi, everyone. My name is Moonkyung Min. I'm doing my PhD in counseling psychology at the University of Calgary. So I'm living in Canada right now.
So for me, beyond all the things that make both of them special is that they are both international students. And as one who has been an international student through the years, from secondary education through undergrad and graduate education, I feel that we have really unique experiences. And both Elvine and Moon are joining us today to talk with us a little bit about what it's like to be an international student in the U.S., their experiences, what we who teach should know, should respect, and all that kind of good stuff. So again, welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And maybe I should can I just start this off by saying I want to offer a blanket apology right here, right now, because I may ask questions that display my ignorance. And so they are meant to be from a learning and knowledge-seeking perspective. They may sound like an ignorance perspective, because they will be from my perspective. And then you can either ignore them or we can edit them out. That's the beauty of having control over audio. But I'm a curious fellow who doesn't know a lot about the world outside my bubble. So that's the beauty of having you on and having you share whatever of your experiences you're willing to share. So thank you.
So maybe we could kick off by having Elvine and Moon just tell us where they're from and how they got here.
Yeah, that could be a long story. So I was born and raised in South Korea, and I did my master's in counseling psychology in South Korea, and I also did a part of my doctoral program in South Korea. And then there was an opportunity that I visited New York City as a visiting researcher. So for that reason, it really opened my eyes for another world. And then I decided that, I want to do another a new PhD in North America. So that was very motivating to me. So I applied to a bunch of places in North America. And among them, I chose University of Calgary. That's why I'm here.
So I am originally from Gabon, Central Africa. I came here as an international student 17 years ago, actually. And I have been basically an international student. So I had my associate degree, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree here, and then I worked for a while, and now I'm doing my PhD in counseling psychology. So I've basically been doing psychology ever since I got to the United States years ago.
So I don't know about you, Yinka. I immediately have 42 questions for each of them. If you want to go or I can go, what's your
Kick us
pleasure?
off. Go.
So for each of you, is there any implied or implicit pressure to stay in country for graduate education? Or is it prestigious to go out of country? I'm not even talking about to go to the US. Might it have been impressive to go to Britain? Or might have been impressive to go to Germany? Or, I mean, can you talk a little bit? And by the way, I know that you can't speak for everyone in your country or everyone interested in your discipline, but to the extent to which these things can be generalized, would it have been more prestigious to stay in country versus out of country, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because I can't represent how people in my country would say.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think majority of the people prefers to stay in the country of origin. So when I was in South Korea, I think almost like 90% of people I knew, they were just being in the same country because that's where we are comfortable. And I used to be like that. And regarding the pressure, actually, when I choose to stay in North America, I received a tremendous amount of pressure from my family to stay in South Korea. They really didn't like me to go because that's something different. And like people think it's not wise to choose something different than other people. But on the other hand, there is the notion that going abroad is more prestigious because I think it has some like historical context that, I'm not gonna go in depth, but yeah, but many of the like knowledges in South Korea are imported from North America. So there is an atmosphere that some people like admire going abroad. So I would say like both exist in South Korea.
Yeah, I would say I really identify with that too. I think it's also seen as very prestigious in my country to like leave and then go study outside, especially if you travel and you learn another language, which is what I was doing, moving from a French-speaking country to an English-speaking country. So you get the language advantage. But there's also the fact that some universities would not offer specific specialties back home. So I would not have been able to do counseling psychology to get my PhD in counseling psychology in my home country if I were there. People also admire the fact that if you're outside the country, there's life experiences that you acquire living in another culture. So you learn from all of that. And also the US particularly also has that, prestigious kind of connotation to it when you think about American education. So I would definitely say that, there's this thought that, yes, going abroad, brings a lot and then, says a lot about you as a person and about the skills that you can acquire. And then when you come back home, you're even stronger as a, researcher or a scholar.
And so Elvine, and if I get too personal, please we'll just skip over it. For both of you, is there that expectation to go back home? I mean, when all the education is said and done and you have your final doctorate or your postdoc or whatever that plan is for the two of you, I know you can't speak for others, to go back home?
Like pressure from where?
From family or from prior mentors or,
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions that I receive very often from my colleagues and my professors at my school. Like, what do you plan to do after getting your PhD? I think that's for me, it's very personally related to the how do I say the legalization of same-sex marriage in South Korea because, I'm married to the woman and I got married in New York City Hall. It was a great small wedding and my relation is not recognized in South Korea. So if somebody asks me like, what are you planning to go back to South Korea after your graduation? I say to them that, as long as my relation is not recognized in South Korea, I don't plan to go. That's my answer. Yeah. So I think it will depend on the personal circumstances of that international student.
And I'm just going to pipe in here as one who was an international student. Along those lines, I think things like country conditions can change. Because I remember when I was getting my PhD, my plan had been to go back to my country. But then our war broke out. And that completely upended and changed everything. So then I had to step back, rethink, replan, regroup, and then come up with another alternative. So country conditions can also impact one's decision about whether one goes back or not.
Definitely. That's something that absolutely resonates with me. And I would say I wouldn't call it pressure so much as it's more of a duty. I think before I left my country, I was pretty much formatted with you go, you learn, and then you come back. And then unfortunately, because of country conditions, I'm thinking more in terms of right now, I cannot, but I'm hoping by the time I'm done, by the time, things change, I'm seeing myself going back home because the goal was I had a scholarship actually from my home country, study, learn, and then come home and bring the knowledge with you.
And I think that duty is a common theme. I mean, even in the West here, we have students who come here from California, come to Idaho to study, and they get pressured to come home, to have that duty to come home to California. They're out-of-state students. And so I think that duty is a fairly familiar theme. I'm sorry, I'm going to let Yinka actually have some questions now.
Well, one question that's jumping to mind is the ways in which, okay, you're going to have to edit that part out, please, Eric, because I lost the way I was going to say it. I have to reframe it. Okay, here we go. Coming to the US as an international student, or to the US, or let's just say going abroad as an international student, you leave, you come from your country, you've learned things a certain way, whether it's the culture, the academic styles, and then you come to a new place and you kind of have to relearn or reorganize how you approach your academic career. And I'm wondering what that has been like for you. For me, for a country that was a British colony, and our style of writing tended to be very long sentences. And then I came here and it's just like, okay, the American style, tighten it up, make it short and sweet, and let's go, get to the point. And that still, I struggle with that in my writing. And so I'm wondering for both of you, what that's been like.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can talk forever about this. I think, going to a new country is living a new life. I actually felt like, so I was like in my early 30s when I first came to the US, New York City as a visiting researcher. And I felt I became a child again. Like everything is so new, navigating the governmental system, navigating the school system and also like interacting with people. I mean, language was a big factor, but I think it cannot be only explained by difficulty in languages. There's like some culture piece, how people communicate, what are the like common topics between the people, like small talk. That really gave me a lot of pain. We didn't have like small talk culture. And here, in every informal relationship or like formal relationship, that small talk is very important. So that was really difficult. And another thing that I really thought was difficult was the strengths-based culture in North America. So when I was growing up, it was definitely a deficit-based. Like it didn't matter how good you are. Teachers always found a part that I still need to improve, and they focus on that. So like pretending to be humble, I can't say I was humble inside, but I had to learn to pretend I'm humble. And it was not good if you stand out so much. So it was always better to stay in the middle and not to be notable too much. Like, whereas like here, people are very individualized. They have their own unique voices, and the teachers really focus on that unique personality, like strengths of each person. So I think that was that was really difficult. Like in the classroom setting, people were encouraged to have an open conversation, share their own opinion about certain topic, and there were many like issues with me. First of all, it took time for me to develop my own opinion because I was used to just listen to the instructor and just follow what they talk to me. So developing my own opinion, that was difficult. And then sharing my opinion, that was another difficulty because I didn't have much experience. I always felt like I'm such a like, imposer and I didn't deserve to like speak aloud of my opinion. So those were the difficult parts. And also it impacts when I'm teaching other students as a PhD student. So for example, like this semester I'm teaching master level course counseling theories. And one of my job is watch master students mock counseling session and give feedback to them. And, the thing in this culture, it's very important to focus on the strengths and deliver areas of improvement in a very strengths-based language. So I really struggle a lot giving those comments because I have to translate in my mind that what's the strengths-based language. So yeah, I think it takes like way longer than me or to like grade those assignments than my domestic peer. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna stop this, but there's so much I can hear about it.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Moon has just said. And I would add to that I also come from a culture that was very disciplinarian when it comes to education. And then coming here, I'm a little bit ambivalent about this because I also think in terms of, being a teacher, being an instructor, and being a student myself, the part that I thought were the hardest for me were adjusting to not the language, surprisingly, but the culture. And yes, developing critical thinking is something that took me longer than my peers, I thought too, because I also came from this, you learn whatever is in the textbook, whatever the instructor tells you, that's the truth, and you just roll with it. And it took me years. It took me even after my bachelor's degree, it took me working as a research assistant, it took me teaching, being a TA, et cetera, talking to my own students and fostering critical thinking, not just in them, but also in myself. And that's where I learned to question things. And I learned to really build that muscle because I was more in okay, so that's the line of thinking. This is what I should think. This is what I should believe. And I should just roll with it. I also think that when it comes to language, so it wasn't so much adjusting to English, but I think Dr. Yinka mentioned it when she mentioned about, the coming from a culture that's very verbose, very wordy, very this in the way that you write, in the way that you speak. We had very indirect ways of saying things. And I think Americans are very much straightforward in the way they address things. And my writing, my thinking also had to adjust accordingly. And I can even sense the difference in my personality. And now it's funny because when I have to interact with people back home, I get impatient because like, oh my God, straight to the point, please. Because I am so used. And it could, on one hand, I do see the strength of that. On the other hand, it could disconnect me from the people that I'm communicating with because I'm more of, okay, let's straight to the point. Can we please have a yes or a no? Can we, let's solve this as quickly as possible. So I do agree that that has been one of the biggest changes. And in my writing, in my thinking, my communication with people, generally speaking, that was the, and then there's also the fact that there's intersectionality too. So I'm female, I'm Black, I'm African. So my experience in the US is also determined by that and by, how people see me and how I react to the way they see me. So a number of other things that I had to adjust to were how people look at me, because in my home country, I'm not a Black woman, I'm just a woman, right? And in this country, I am a Black woman, and that comes with assumptions about who I am, about what I can accomplish, etc. So all of that determined the doors that were open to me, determined the way that I would go about doing things. It is also a culture that is very, very extroverted, or that opens door for people that are extroverted. And as an introverted person, I had to learn to do networking. I had to learn to approach my professors and then talk to them and say, I need experience in research. I need to. So all of those I had to change in order to be able to grow as a person. And like I said, I'm ambivalent about this because some of those were painful experiences, but at the same time, it's part of who I am today as a researcher, as a teacher, so yeah.
I want to say, as a by the by, both of these individuals are phenomenal researchers and writers. I have been very, very fortunate, very blessed to have co-authored a number of papers in pretty high impact journals with both of them. So, take everything that they're saying with a big grain of salt as well. But and I'm going to let Eric also have some space again, but just to, you've taken us down a really interesting path. And I'm wondering, given these experiences, what are some of the things U.S. professors or North American educators should know or should think about when they're working with students from other cultures, international students specifically? I mean, one of the things that's really ringing in my ears, as you both have said, that was my truth as well, is just how shy and quiet we can be initially in the classroom setting.
Yinka,
Mhm.
That's a great question. We'll probably spend 20 minutes there, but I'm sorry, I'm going to be a rude American who's going to interrupt you. I know why you invited our two guests today. These two young academics are brilliant. Did you hear it? I mean, did you hear it in your own way? I'm not teasing. I'm being genuine. You're both absolutely brilliant in your observations and what you bring to this conversation. And I hope our listeners get it. I mean, both of you. I mean, I've never heard it described this way, Moon, deficit-based culture and strengths-based culture. I'm sure that's commonly used in other places, but to hear it that way, and Elvine, that phrase it just rolled off your tongue. In my country, I'm not a Black woman, I'm a woman. It's like, but you're not supposed to swear on the podcast. I can bleep this out. Holy shit. I mean, that's just like, it's like, it's one of these things that just shakes me to my core and thinking about, well, yeah, I don't think about I'm a white guy. I'm a guy. I don't think about that in this country, in the US. So thank you both for these really amazing insights that to you are just every day, right? La-di-da every day, my whole life. But when you share them so articulately and so clearly, they really make a lot of sense. And I get the introvert thing too, by the way, because I am a painfully shy introvert, although I can flip the switch when I have to. And I do every day when I go to class. And Moon, and I think for Elvine as well, didn't it bug the heck out of you when you came to North America? Because you had been in a deficit-based culture in your whole educational system. You had seen people, and you're criticized, right? Everything, you're told your deficits your whole life. You're never told your whole your strengths. And then you come to a culture where everybody is praised for the littlest thing. Congratulations, you've got a trophy for tying your shoe today. And you're around all these prima donna males and females in North America. Didn't it have to drive you a little bit crazy to be around this when you've worked so hard all your life to be, I'm sure, outstanding and excellent, yet that's been told to you very rarely? And if I'm mischaracterizing it, just tell me and we'll edit this out, or just tell me I'm incorrect. That's better yet.
But I can speak a bit about that. So in terms of the supervisor and supervisor relationship, I really had a hard time adjusting to the egalitarian, like the democratic nature of the relationship. So, like I work with Inca. Inca was my supervisor in New York City. And like, yeah, I mean, like she was really giving me lots of good comments on very little things. And I'm like, oh, what's wrong with this person? Like, should I be aware of this? Yeah, I felt I interpret this as a sign of something negative that, oh, maybe I'm gonna be like taken advantage of or something. But
You were expecting negative. You were expecting the be told your deficits.
yeah, like something to improve, to be perfect. I
She wasn't
think.
giving you that. She was giving you all the things she's doing well. You were thinking, what's wrong with her? She's
Yeah,
not doing her job.
yeah, and also I think that the cultural differences are also reflected on how people call each other. So in my culture, because South Korea is based on Confucianism culture, you people define each other by their title. So you don't call people's name. You call like doctor somebody, like a teacher somebody. Whereas here, I just felt so awkward and uncomfortable just calling Inca as Inca, not like Doctor Inca, blah blah blah. So yeah, there are many differences. But now this is my 5th year in North America, and I just love how equal this relationship can be. I met like so many good advisors and supervisors in Calgary, and I think I feel so grateful that like somebody is keeping an eye on my strengths and they just share my strengths. And I think if I can receive that feedback, at first I was not able to receive that good feedback, but if I can receive it, it really helps you to like further grow. So I feel like I'm growing every day here.
Yes, that definitely the call me by my first name from the professors is very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable for international students. I mean, from cultures like Moon and I, yeah, it's mine. It's oh my God, why would I do that? It feels extremely disrespectful, even though you know that it's not. So yeah, I still call Dr. Inka Dr. Inka because otherwise it feels like it's something is wrong.
And I have to throw in that as an international, again, from the professor side, I actually have my hybrid of that is to have students call me Dr. Yinka as opposed to, because I also can't. No, you can't call me by my first name. But here's a way that we could all work around it.
And it's honestly, I think pretty much just to echo what Moon was saying, it's an adjustment that you need to make, because when you come from cultures like that, you think, okay, you need to tell me what is wrong so that I can improve, work on it, and move on. And you think if only your strengths are being emphasized, you feel like the person is not being sincere. You think like you're not really improving where you should be improving, that it's not really helping, that it's just like feeding your ego, etc. And certainly we can make a case for that. We could say that, cuddling also is not ideal. But I think both as a receiver of that and also as an instructor myself now, I realize that you also have a lot of students that are struggling with their own like self-worth, self-esteem. And using a strength-based approach is in many, many cases much healthier than, say, oh, this is what you didn't do right. This is what you didn't do this. So at first I was very skeptical of it, but then practicing it myself and working with them as well, I could say, you know what, this actually is pretty good. It's much better to say, well, this is how you can improve. If you want to, this is how you can work. And this is what you do really, really great. How about you do more of that? How about you do? And I have found that to be very, very effective. But it is an adjustment because, again, you come from a culture that tells you, why would you think everything is just good with you or right with you? Something has to be wrong. And if the person is not being sincere, how are you supposed to improve? How are you not cuddled or given this illusion that you're such a great person, etc.? But the truth is, we all have, to begin with, like those fears and those uncertainty, and we have those voices, especially minority or minoritized people in the greater American society are already told you're worthless. You're not supposed to do this. You won't achieve. You won't be doing this. And being one of the voices that say, you know what you're doing is great. Actually, you know what? If you want to improve, this is what you should be doing. But otherwise, this is what you're doing good. This is great. great job doing that, do more, etc. And being attentive, being there, it makes a huge difference. So,
Inka, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I apologize, but go ahead and ask that question that you wanted to ask. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, so what should North American professors, what would you want them to know?
I have a different slant on that, if it might help.
Sure.
What are the mistakes they make that just irritate you? That, come on, professors, do a better job. You should know better. Come on.
I can speak about this from the intersectionality lens. I think professors just assume like students, people of color as straight. So yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to challenge. That you shouldn't assume every people of color internet student as straight. And like regarding the things that I want the professors to know about international student is it's important to give them time. So I was terrible in my first year in this program. If I self-evaluate, I mean, I don't know how I would look from the outsider views, but inside of me, there was lots of confusion, lots of like self-doubt, and I was not sure if I'm doing well. I feel like I was the only person in this whole cohort who is not smart enough. But now I'm in my third year and I feel much better about myself because I had all those time to adjust and explore what's going on outside and like build connection with people. So like giving them time, like not judge them based on how they're doing and not just judging them based on the first impression and just giving them enough time. I think that's very important. And another thing that I think that is really helpful for international students is to be connected with other international students. So I think Inca's research lab was a perfect place for that because I got connected with so many international students there. And I think that was the place where I gained my confidence. Because if you're the only person, there's so much stress from being the minority. But if there's even one more student who is like me, I just get so confident about myself. So yeah, just having international students to be connected with other international students, that's my biggest recommendations for the professors.
I agree. I think remembering that it takes time to adjust. And for those of them who can be familiar with some of the challenges that international students face, for instance, if you're an F1 student in the United States, you cannot work while you're getting your diploma. So that limits the kind of experience that you can have, that limits the work experience that you can have, etc. There's the social isolation that also comes with it because the way you socialize and the way you make friends, at least for me, in my home country, is very different from in the United States. I think Moon mentioned the small talk, for instance. In my country, it's also very, very different. So in many cases, especially when you're new, there's a social isolation. There's the fact that you don't really have opportunities for actual work experience. So you don't get to practice, to have the skills that are necessary to have for entry into the job market after, especially for fields or areas like psychology, et cetera. You want to be able to have some research experience. You want to be able to, but you're not necessarily able to do that because of the limits of your status as a student here. And all of those impact your self-esteem. That impacts your your sense of self-competence, your sense of competence, what you can accomplish. You don't necessarily have the social network that you have. You have the pressure to succeed. That's there because your family, because you left everything behind. So all of that is right there. And then you have instructors that don't necessarily know what's going on for you, that don't really necessarily understand that you might be withdrawn because you come from a culture where you have not necessarily been taught that you could just talk to an instructor and ask them for clarification and ask them. So all of those must be taken into account. And I guess maybe reaching out to students, maybe creating a safe space and reaching out to everyone, not just necessarily international students, but checking in with the students, say, okay, how are we doing with this? How do we feel about the next homework? If you have any question, this is what we could do, etc. And just checking in with students from time to time, inviting them and creating this safe space where they can reach out to the instructors. And I would say, like Moon said, definitely have more international students around, acknowledging that they're not just students coming from abroad. They also have limitations that they're subjected to being here in the United States because of the status that they have. There's also the fact that their family members are not there. There's the pressure. The tuition is much more expensive than for locals. So all of those are factors, all of those are stressors that I think must be taken into account when thinking about the experiences of international students. And I would say one of the last things would be, because I usually get why would you want to go home? Like, why wouldn't I? So it's the very perception that, oh, this is everything that you want it to be. And why would you ever want to go home, et cetera? And I do understand when, I have friends and close ones telling me this because they do know me. Like, well, you've been living here for a while, but otherwise it can come up as, kind of condescending. It's like, well, yeah, I kind of want to go home. I'm supposed to come here, just get a diploma. I do have a home and a house and people that I love. And like the US is not my everything and my end to it all. So yeah, I would say that I would want instructors to think about that it takes some time to adjust, like Moon said, to think about all of the other factors that may come into play and to create a safe space for international students because of culture, because of where we come from, because of the language barrier. There's a social isolation that's there. And also because of the limitation of the visa that we have, there's this social isolation that then tends to occur. And it makes it very difficult for us to know what resources can I access? What resources am I entitled to begin with? Things like mental health services, for instance, many international students do not know how to access mental health services. And, giving that information, you know what, on campus, those are the resources that we have. This is where you could go, et cetera, because we need that we need the services just like anyone else. So things like that, giving them the information, checking in with the students as the instructor, would be very important.
I think we're just about at our time limit because I know the two of you have papers to grade and dissertations to write. I do have one item to close on. Do you have anything else?
Go ahead.
And we can skip this if it's going to make you uncomfortable. I want to end on a strengths-based question. I want to give you each a chance to peer into your future and take a moment for a commercial and a self-promotion. When you're done with your degree, when you're done with your program, what would you like to do? Tell our audience, what do you want to do? What would be your ideal job? If you were doing an open interview, an open pitch, take a couple of minutes and let our audience know, hey, what would you like to do? Please. Or not, or we can say goodbye.
Okay, you can delete it if it's not good. So I'm just gonna give it a try.
I'm sure it's going to be great. That's the difference between a strengths-based believer and a deficit-based.
Yeah. So after getting my PhD, I wanna be a professor. So I wanna get a job in the academia. It's so funny because it took so many years until I was able to say it out loud that I want to be a professor. Yeah, I think there was a lots of inside fear or the fear of being judged by other people if I say that I want to be a professor. So yeah, I think from last year I started to share to other professors in my faculty that I want to be a professor after graduation. Please let me know what can I do. And I started to seek information. So this was a very transforming experience for me. Before that, I was very judgmental to myself. I kind of labeled myself that, you wouldn't be successful because you're an international student. I think I was the person who was actually labeling myself that, you can't do it because you're an international student. But I think what really transformed me is that one-on-one genuine relationship with other faculty members and my mentors, including Inca. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to every mentor I met in the US and the Canada who actually flourished my life. That's it.
And Moon, when you have your doctorate, what will the specialty area be?
So my research will be focusing on the intersectionality between racial minority and sexual minority. So that's the area that I'm passionate about. And yeah, that's the area I wanted to commit my advice to.
But is it going to be like a PhD in clinical or counseling or social or what?
Oh, counseling. Yeah. Because
Counseling,
yeah,
gotcha.
I'm majoring in counseling right now. Yeah.
And will your ideal job also include being part of a clinic or seeing patients, getting your license?
Wow. You're giving me very specific question. So
I'm trying to get you prepped for that market when you go in the market and get that job as a professor.
Okay. So ideally, if I can tailor whatever my life can be, I want to work for the university like 4 days a week and have 1 day a week doing my clinical work so that I can actually teach counseling and clinical work to my students.
It's doable. I have a colleague here who
I
teaches
know.
counseling, clinical. He teaches abnormal psych, and he has a small little practice that he still keeps his license. It's definitely doable.
Absolutely. What about you, Elvine?
Okay, so same. I don't know. Let's try this. Okay, I'm not entirely sure at this point. Actually, I do know. I don't think I want to be teaching. I think I see myself more as heading a research center because I don't think we have enough data as to my research focuses primarily on gender, sexuality, and social political behavior. I know it's weird, but yes, all three. And what I do want to do is gather more data because I'm interested primarily in African populations, sub-Saharan African populations. So I do see myself working or heading a research center, and I want to acquire as much data as possible to figure out what the needs of Africans are, how we can help them, and everything that, because we have a lot of data and it's mostly primarily Western or Northern American, and I'm trying to get enough data for African populations first. And then work on possible interventions. So how do we help? What are the needs? And then how do we help people? And yeah, so far that's the vision that I have. And I'm not sure exactly how that actually translate as far as work opportunities. I would say research when I graduate, I see myself working as a researcher first. And then depending on the type of interventions, depending on the type of needs, and maybe work as a counselor.
Yeah, and that research might phase into like a policy wonk type of thing. So it might be doing policy work, and part of that is doing research and, still being very scholarly. Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing for both of you is that you're going to leave with a suite of research and intellectual tools that you can essentially do whatever you want to do. We have a dear friend, Asani Sewell, who was one of the founding members of this podcast, who went to undergrad, went to graduate school, became a clinician, right, Inka? Clinical PhD, and went to one institution, earned promotion and tenure, left, how rude, went to another institution, earned promotion and tenure again at a second one, left and went into industry and is working for a diabetes clinic. And so you have the skill set, you will have the skill set that you can do what you want, and you can change your mind. You can change your mind early career, mid-career, late career. So if you don't know right now for sure, that's okay. And if you do know right now for sure, that's okay.
And that for me is one of the beauties of this field, is that there's so many ways to be a psychologist, to be a mental health professional. Thank you both so very much for bringing your richness, your thoughtfulness to our podcast.
There will be no critique. There will be no deficits-based approach to listening and re-listening to this podcast.
And I hope we can bring you back again.
Absolutely.
You would be willing to come back again.
I think the two of them maybe ought to be on the podcast, not just guests on the podcast. This was amazing.
Again, thank you for having us. That was much appreciated.
Thank you. And we will be in touch. I will be in touch with both of you.
I want to be in touch with both of them.